Hey, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Network. We're here in Charleston, South Carolina, outside the Fish and Fry, the infamous event here, sponsored by Congressman Jim Clyburn. The three candidates all were on stage for a short while, rallying up the crowd. Martin O'Malley went first. Martin O'Malley called for new leadership and saying the country needs to move forward, not backwards, kind of echoing a lot of the things he said, saying Bernie and Hillary are old. He wants to be the new leader for the country.
Thank you, South Carolina. South Carolina can help make history in leading this country toward a political revolution.
Bernie Sanders also got really loud applauses here at Fish Fry. He talked about his usual income inequality points. He also got a huge applause when he said he's not going to let Donald Trump and the other Republican candidates divide us. Also called again for a revolution. South Carolina here at the Fish Fry seemed to really be for him, as opposed to the other event we went to earlier in the night, which I'll get to in a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hillary Clinton was the last to speak. The former Secretary of State talked about the economy doing better under Democratic presidents than Republican presidents. She also said her main goal as president would be to raise incomes. Talked a little bit more about all that the South Carolina could be looking for in a Democrat, talking about trying to make South Carolina turn blue. We'll see if that's going to happen. Earlier in the night, we were at a much less raucous event, the first in the South Democratic dinner, where the three candidates spoke for a much longer time. I'd say about 15 to 20 minutes each. Martin O'Malley started out the night. He was very, very bold, very loud, as opposed to the Democratic debate performances, where he's been a little bit more subdued.
I'd like to say that Donald Trump is the most outrageous and unqualified person to ever run for president. But that's not fair to Ted Cruz, is it?
The audience loved that one. He also had a message for the NRA saying, one American life is worth more than all the gun sales in the world. We're not going to solve cancer by adding more cancer. We're not going to solve climate change by adding more climate problems. And we're not going to solve the gun problem with adding more guns into distribution. The audience liked that. Bernie Sanders was next. Got a pretty good opening ovation when he walked on stage. I'd say his loudest ovation came when he had a message for Walmart's owners, saying that Walmart's the Walmart salary that the owners pay their employees, which is very low, almost like a starvation diet, is the reason we pay so much in Medicaid and money for low-income workers that need support. He said to Walmart, get off the welfare train, start paying workers a living wage. The crowd really liked that. Another great statement from Senator Sanders that got the crowd going. He talked about the epidemic of police violence against African-American youth, bringing up Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and others. He said, we must end police departments looking like occupying armies. The audience really liked that. Another loud applause Senator Sanders got was when he blasted corrupt Wall Street. He said, how is it that Wall Street bankers don't go to jail and get bailed out, but teenagers get criminal records for smoking pot? The audience seemed to really like that. I will say Hillary Clinton, who spoke last, got the loudest ovation from the crowd when she walked on stage. Should note, this was a crowd of mostly establishment-type Democrats, a lot of local Democratic officials, a lot of local Democratic politics insiders, establishment folks, not your regular voters, I'd say, were in this event. Hillary got a very loud applause. Hillary was hugging President Obama for dear life. She was praising President Obama. She started out by saying President Obama doesn't get the credit he deserves for saving the American economy from the abyss, which got a huge applause from the audience. The audience was also pretty heavily African-American, I'd say, about 50-60% African-American. Secretary Clinton also had comments about the Republican debate that we covered a few days ago, at calling these reality TV characters have no connection to reality, and she's offended by their constant insults at President Obama, as well as their coded racial language, using free stuff as an example. She continued to praise President Obama to the audience's delight. Before the candidates spoke, my producer Eric and I spoke to some people attending the event. It was kind of mixed. Spoke with one gentleman who was a Bernie Sanders supporter, said that he thinks Bernie Sanders is really for the people who have been oppressed over the last few years. He's an African-American young student who says he thinks he met Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders, instead of wanting to talk to establishment folks in the audience, old school politicians, he wanted to come talk to a young person. They spoke for 15 minutes, but really spoke to this student. Another person we spoke to was an older African-American gentleman, veteran of the Vietnam War. He was also a Bernie Sanders supporter, talking about how Bernie understands the needs of veterans, both their mental problems they have coming out of war service, as well as the physical problems. Talked about legislation Senator Sanders passed on a bipartisan basis with Senator John McCain. Also talked about old Southern racism and how the Republicans like Donald Trump are trying to tap into that. Very interesting interview. We also spoke with former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, who came out months ago in support of Hillary Clinton. I spoke with her because she's a very progressive politician. Many would say a progressive firebrand. Why she's supporting Secretary Clinton and not Senator Bernie Sanders.
Well, first of all, I know that she can get stuff done, and
I hear that a lot. Bernie's been a senator too, so.
Of course, but she's also been on the executive side as well, and I think that she's, I'm interested, especially after this period of gridlock, in getting something through. While the idea of a lot of Bernie's ideas are great, obviously, but the question is, what can we get through? And she doesn't differ with him on a lot of those, but I think she knows the mechanisms to be able to reach agreements and get stuff through. So I'm really interested in results and building on the president's legacy, and she's obviously wanting to take up that mantle.
Hillary's gotten criticisms that, since she started running, she's been talking about closing the income gap.
It's not fair, though. I mean, she really has been. What was all of her work at the Children's Defense Fund about? But working for kids, working for families that didn't have access to resources. So, no, this has been her progressive bona fides, if you will, are lifelong. And really, it's not a fair, he has been championing it as well, but so has she.
Lastly, I spoke with David Brock. If you don't know David Brock, he used to be one of the premier Clinton haters out there. Ran ads against Bill Clinton in the 90s, this and that. He then co-founded Media Matters for America, which is a watchdog website, mostly going after Fox News and other Republican conservative outlets. Now, years later, he is one of Clinton's biggest boosters and is running a super PAC for Hillary Clinton.
We were always expecting a very competitive race in Iowa, not necessarily everywhere else, and I think that's normal. And I think when you look at the polls, one of the things that's interesting is that there are a lot of self-described independent affiliated people who are supporting Senator Sanders, so that's where some of these numbers are coming from. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you project down into the other primaries, that could be a serious issue because the Democrats are supporting Hillary.
I read a report before I came in that your super PAC might be releasing an ad this weekend about Bernie's medical records. Can you tell me about that?
No, we don't have any plan to do that. No.
So they're wrong?
Yeah, I didn't see that actually.
Yeah, Politico has a story that you guys are calling for.
Basically, it's not an ad, and it's not calling for anything. But I do think that, particularly for top-tier candidates, it's very usual that people will release their health records. And
why are you guys bringing it up now, like 2 weeks before the caucus?
It's up to the Sanders campaign to decide that. We're not charging anything or calling for anything.
So it's not like we're nervous, so we got to bring up his health?
Definitely not, no.
I don't know about that. You'll be the judge if they're doing that because they really want the American people to have his medical records, or they want to continue attacking Bernie Sanders as he closes in on her in Iowa. I'd say in the general feel today, the first event we covered, the dinner, was a much more insider establishment crowd. So a lot of older people. We spoke with some actual local politicians here in South Carolina. You saw quite a bit of people in the audience that are probably writing the checks for some of these candidates. Here at the Fish Fry, none of that. A lot of volunteers, a lot of young people, and the candidates kind of let their hair down, so to speak, talking less in talking points, more in passion. Another thing I'll say, South Carolina is revved up for their primary coming up in February. They are looking forward to the chance, as usual, to be the third voting contest, first in the South. And most of the people we've spoken with here are very into the campaign. I'd say in Charleston in particular, I've spoken with just as many Bernie Sanders supporters as Hillary supporters. But there's definitely an enthusiasm here that we've seen in Iowa and that we've seen in New Hampshire. Stay tuned for more TYT Politics.